Hey folks, good morning. Happy Friday. It is a Friday. It is the Friday after Juneteenth. Um, my husband and I did not post anything about Juneteenth. We didn't make any public proclamations, but we did celebrate or honor and commemorate in our own way. Um, and of course, given the subject matter, Juneteenth provides a really um, deep prompt to think about what freedom means. What is freedom and liberation? And particularly in the context of emigrating from the United States, if you're someone who is in the crosshairs of Project 2025, I feel like emigration takes on a broader significance with regard to liberation and freedom, the ability to live free of fear and punishment and the threat of incarceration, deportation, and the ending of one's life, which a lot of people are actually facing right now in the United States. So, in any event, I wanted to do a voiceover of this article because a lot of folks, I have new followers and subscribers, and also because I think it's important to note that there's a really big difference between leaving your country because you feel marginalized, because laws are being passed and policies are being implemented that target you for your identity and your family composition and who you choose to love and all of that, and emigrating just for sort of, the concept of a better quality of life. And so our emigration was definitely centered around the former. I had thought about leaving the U.S. for a long, long time, but it was only when we really felt that we weren't safe anymore in the United States that we took the leap. So I'm going to read this story, and hopefully it gives you a clearer view of the impetus behind our emigration, and lets you know that if you're working with me to emigrate, and you're doing it because of your concern over the trajectory of the socio-political situation in the United States, that I've been there and I get it, and you don't have to explain it to me. And I think that's one of the things that my clients have appreciated most in working together. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to help them. All right, so here we go. Why we fled the U.S. in 2022 and why I'm glad we didn't wait. A quest to find a place where interracial couples are accepted by me. It was never about the 2024 election for us. The great unraveling, what I'm choosing to call the U.S.'s slide to fascism, as far as I'm concerned, began in 2016, when, despite all logic, common sense, and civic responsibility, the Republican Party allowed a maniac to become its candidate. And underestimating the powerful hold of misogyny drenched in white supremacy and served in a bowl of ignorance, experts thought he couldn't take the office. Later, experts opined that Congress and the Supreme Court would rein him in. All of these chips had already fallen, and an intervening Democrat administration couldn't close the can of worms that had been opened. My husband and I were living in Southwest Florida, the origin of numerous January 6 terrorist attack organizers and participants. FUCK Biden flags flew proudly from ridiculously tall mounted flagpoles in neighbors' front yards. I had worked on contract to support a local Democrat candidate for office in the 2020 election, a smart, savvy, straight-talking lawyer who called BS on the insane resistance to wearing masks in the middle of an airborne infectious pandemic, and who advocated against the corruption of politicians making land use decisions at the behest of real estate developers hell-bent on eviscerating Florida's beautiful coastal ecosystems to turn a quick profit. I got way more exposure to the opposition's strategies, talking points, nefarious tactics, and unhinged manpower than I wanted. Republican Party volunteers went so far as to install their own candidates' yard signs in front of the Dem table at a voting location, blocking my client's signs, and didn't even pretend it was a mistake when I called them on it. They just rolled their eyes and snickered. Our candidate lost because common sense, science, and conservation were no match for greed, megalomania, denial, and raging entitlement. We lived at ground zero for MAGA, and it was alive and well, despite Trump being under investigation and an entirely new functioning administration being in office. The hair triggers on which MAGA followers teeter perpetually were all too common to encounter. I'm reminded of a chilling moment when a pickup truck with Trump flags flying from its bed rolled up beside me at a four-way stop sign to curse me out for not blowing through it. I would bet money, and win it, that he had at least one loaded firearm beside him. I clamped down my initial reaction to tell him off, knowing that the man was unhinged. In April 2022, Florida came in only second to Texas in gun ownership, with 35% of the population living in homes that harbored guns. Guns and their radicalized owners were everywhere. I knew none of those things would stop, irrespective of what might happen in 2024. My mind was already made up that I wanted to leave. It was only a matter of time before my husband was arrested or attacked for living while black, or both of us harmed for miscegenating with each other, or that I encountered the wrong lunatic on the wrong day and lost my own cool. It was untenable. The final nudges were a matter-of-fact announcement that our lease, expiring in 2 months at the time of the notice, would be increasing our rent by $400 a month, followed by the unannounced decimation of the forest behind the home we rented. That last tore a hole in my heart. We were done. 7 weeks after I sobbed from deep in my chest for the splitting trunks of murdered trees and all the tiny creatures who had been killed or displaced to build another concrete box for sunburned retirees, we crossed the border into Mexico with our temporary residency visas. Since landing, finally, in Cozumel a few weeks after that in 2022, I've been breathing relief. And I'm really glad we didn't wait until now. The early bird catches the worm, they say. Prescience is something I have come to learn that I have. It's not always an advantage. In corporate contexts, it shows up as ideas that one-dimensional yet powerful people balk at, classify as unpragmatic, or simply fail to even comprehend. Invariably, years later, when I'm long gone from their stifling boxes, they pick up my ideas and offer them as their own. Nevertheless, when we speak of survival, being able to sense the direction of things and move accordingly is a gift. We made the move when we did, and I'm glad because things are changing. You want to be ahead of the crowd in these situations. Side note, this was written months ago, so we are beyond this at this point. Back to the article. The U.S. Passport Office claims to be processing passports within 4 to 6 weeks. I will be surprised if that holds, especially with impending funding cuts to federal agencies. Consulate offices of countries that are couched as desirable destinations for those leaving the U.S. in the many expat articles are likely to be overwhelmed with applicants, which of course will result in fewer approvals, more selectivity, more denials. As MAGA moves in and continues its campaign to villainize and dehumanize Latin Americans seeking asylum, there will be backlash from Latin American migration officials, and understandably so. People from the U.S. will increasingly emigrate to Latin America illegally, which will spur more backlash. European countries are already walking back some of the programs they had opened to attract digital nomads and investors. This will only ramp up. Financial solvency thresholds required by various visa programs will increase, as they have exponentially for immigrants to Mexico in the last 2 years. Most people will behave as if they have all the time in the world to leave the U.S. until they don't. Emigrating is stressful enough without these dynamics. I'm really grateful we won't be dealing with them. Instead, we'll be doing our best to assist those most at risk in finding legal, conscientious pathways to a better environment. I wasn't sure if I wanted to take this on. It involves a lot of complexity, research, and coaching. There's an emotional investment involved because I actually really care about people, especially people who are walking in similar shoes to the ones I've worn. I know the deep-seated fear and anxiety and how difficult it can make accomplishing even the most mundane of tasks. And I know that for some people, leaving is the answer. One of my all-time favorite authors, Toni Morrison, may she rest in peace, once said, "If you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else." I like to believe that our long road to emigration led here, empowering others to take the leap in finding some version of safety, agency, and peace. Empowering others to become some version of free, wherever that may be. And that's it. And just a note on this as well, that, I have written a lot about emigration that is not conscientious, and gentrification and colonization, and sort of the problematic behaviors that that the United States has become renowned for, both via its tourism and its exports of immigrants. And that stands. That stands. And both things are true. And that's one of the things that I just want to point out is, like, being from the United States and being in the United States and marginalized in the context of the United States is absolutely a reason to emigrate. And I stand by my assertion that the right to emigrate is a human right. I mean, everybody has ancestors that have emigrated from somewhere. Almost everyone, including, people that might now consider themselves indigenous to a place. At some point, somebody moved, right? And that's a right. That is a right. Now, it's also the right of sovereign nations under our current international legal scheme to deny people entry, right? That is also a right. We don't live in a world of open borders completely. And, that's the reality. And it's just because somebody's leaving an environment because of persecution or marginalization doesn't then give them the right to turn around and go someplace else and, behave as a colonizer. Both things are true. And I think that because discourse around this issue has become, like every other issue, particularly online, has become so divided and so dichotomous and so black and white, that some people really want to put me in some kind of box, or others who are speaking to these issues and unpacking these thorny issues in some kind of box, and call us self-righteous or call us, whatever the case may be. But we're just trying to figure it out. I think we're all just trying to figure it out, based on the information that we have, based on the values that we hold. And, my values and perspectives are shaped by my unique experience living in this world, and by the experts that I've read and spoken with on issues of gentrification and colonization, on the United States history that gives rise to the conditions that the United States is facing right now, and the marginalization of people that belong to different identities. I know a lot about all this stuff, right? So in some ways, that knowledge makes it hard to reach conclusions that are either black or white. And so, I write about these things, and I think about these things, and I talk these things through with the people that I appreciate and respect, and who are just trying to navigate this world. So yeah, it is both and. it is true that someone living in the United States is extremely privileged by virtue of having a U.S. passport. And it is also true that someone having a U.S. passport in the United States who has been identified, or a family who has been identified as breaking the rules of, the regime, may be facing persecution. And when they move to another country and bring their money, they may be contributing to that country's economy, and they may be making things worse. And a lot of the power that we hold as individuals really boils down to our individual choices, because we don't necessarily have the ability to change, things at a systemic level. The power we do have is in our choices. So, it's none of these things are easy. There aren't easy answers. I think human society across the globe is just fraught with conflict. And as resources become more scarce and more inequitably distributed and more concentrated in elite circles, the conflict is going to increase. And I think a lot of us are just out here trying to do our best and connect with others who actually care about doing their best. So yeah, I just wanted to say all of that, and to say that if you're in the United States and you have that little voice within you, this is one thing I've noticed with all of my clients, and it certainly was true for us. If that little voice within you is telling you get out, and I'm telling you, every single one of my clients who has actually left, not just, exploring options, but has left, they had that voice inside of them. And if that little voice inside of you is telling you to go, I will just say that that voice comes from an intelligence that you hold in your system. Whether it's epigenetic, or whether it's, a product of the neurological extension that is your gut, and that's scientific fact. If it's telling you that, there's a reason. And if it were me, I would listen. When it was me, I did listen. Yeah, that's about it. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. We've had a long, busy week, and I'm looking forward to resting this weekend. And I hope everyone who needs rest is able to do the same. Cuídate.